Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Reform Dallas Election Series. My name is Barry Jacobs, and with me is Soraya Santos, who will be your moderators tonight.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the forum. I also want to introduce Millie Domenech and Micah Moore, who will be helping us out with timekeeping and technical duties. So Reform Dallas is an informal organization of Dallasites committed to honest and transparent local government. You may be one of the 12,000 members of our Reform Dallas Facebook group. If not, we'd love for you to join. We also offer independent journalism on the web, where you'll find the city's very best guide to our municipal elections. So you should check it out at reformdallas.io. That's reformdallas.io. Reform Dallas does not make candidate endorsements, although our members have opinions like everyone else. The point of these forums is to let the candidates speak to all of us and take their best shot at earning our vote. We want this to be a fair and illuminating experience for everyone here.
Thanks, Soraya. We'll have two segments tonight. In the first segment, each candidate gets a short intro, and then we move to prepared questions that each candidate will answer. For the second segment, we'll open up for audience questions, so stick around for that. Please submit your questions to Millie Domenech in the Zoom chat panel at any time, and we'll call on you in the second segment to pose your question to the candidates. One last thing, we will publish the recorded forums on our website and in the Facebook group. So by participating tonight, you expressly give us permission to do that. And with that, here are your candidates in District 1. Stephanie Kyle and Chad West have graciously joined us tonight. Welcome.
Yay!
Yep.
And Gerardo Sanchez and Giovanni Valderas were also extended invitations, but they were unable to attend.
Okay. Here we go. Candidates, we're going to give you 2 minutes for your answers. And when your time is up, Micah is going to stop you. He's just going to say time. So Stephanie, we'll start with you. Give us 2 minutes to tell us who you are and why we should want to vote for you.
All right. My name's Stephanie Kyle. SkyleForDallas.com is my website if you want to check out other info there. And I live in Kessler Park, which is in North Oak Cliff. I moved here in 2011. I bought my house here. I became quickly involved in our neighborhood. I was communications chair. I worked on our website and tried to increase how we were able to engage with our neighbors. And then I became vice president and was in charge of our largest fundraiser, which is the Kessler Crawl. And I have been on the board of directors for the Dallas Homeowners League, which helps other neighborhoods create their homeowners associations. And I've been involved in Dallas Pals and things of that nature. And I really enjoy getting to know the neighbors, communicate with the neighbors. Representing them was a great honor, and I just want to be able to do that on a larger scale. I feel like some recent events, the particular goals of neighbors weren't heard or listened to, and so I stepped up to run because I want to really be able to engage with our neighbors and be a true representative and a voice for the community. I want to protect home values. I want to increase our neighborhood safety and bring positive growth and development to Oak Cliff that fits our culture and community.
Right on. Thank you, Stephanie.
Thank you.
Chad, we're going to give you 2 minutes to tell us about yourself. And Micah, are you ready?
Yes.
Okay. Chad,
All
go
right.
ahead.
Thanks, Soraya. Thank you for having me tonight. Appreciate it. And appreciate what this group does for transparency and for keeping us accountable at City Hall. I think we need it. The staff needs it for sure. And I'm glad that somebody's doing it. So I've lived in the district 13 years. I came to the district and started my own small business, which was a law firm with $1,000 and a lot of blood, sweat, and tears. And I believe, that everyone should have the opportunity to do the same thing. I love Oak Cliff because of the diversity, because of the old historic neighborhoods, because of the fact that it's an ever-changing kind of part of the city that's really special. Some of the things I'm most proud of since I was elected as a city council member was, when I was chair of Housing and Homelessness Solutions before, I was removed in December, but I had a good year and a half or year and a few months. We successfully produced over 2,600 affordable homes in the city. We passed several different policies to push the ball forward going down the road. We started a challenge to end veterans homelessness in the city of Dallas, which will be, we will meet that challenge by the end of 2021. Some of the other projects that I was specifically involved in very closely was the eviction ordinance that Councilman Basil Dua championed. And I was very happy to be a signatory on that and work behind the scenes to help get that passed. Some of the more fun things that came out of the awful situation of COVID was our parklets pilot project, which is now a policy in the city of Dallas that helps small businesses. Something I was really excited to be the champion of as well, in addition to other things that we could talk about tonight. So once again, thanks for having me, and look forward to your questions.
Sorry about that. Okay, thanks, candidates. Let's move on to the questions. Here are the ground rules. Soraya or I will ask a question, and each candidate gets 2 minutes to respond. Again, when your time is up, Michael will stop you. If we feel an answer needs a follow-up, we'll ask it and give the candidate a reasonable amount of time to respond. We're interested in your ideas and how you will approach the job. So let's get started. And Soraya, you're on mute.
I did it to myself. So since Stephanie, you started with the intros, we're going to start with Chad this time around. That's okay. And Mike, are you ready?
Yes.
Okay. Chad, okay, our first question, one moment. I'm just trying to be fancy. Okay, this question is going to be for both of you. Chad, this is a public safety question. What can the city council do to ensure public safety is being considered without negatively affecting the most marginalized and underserved areas of the city? Did you mute Chad Berry?
Okay, I think I'm unmuted now. Yeah, great.
Yeah.
So public safety. So I think the city learned a lot from the tragic death of George Floyd, and going through that process was a very difficult one for a lot of folks. The city council tried to do the best we could to address desired changes from across the city. And TC, I think, I don't always think TC is perfect, but TC listened to council, and he listened to the vast majority of the public on putting in the real change efforts into the budget and into policy. I think moving forward, we need to continue to roll those out. There was a defund narrative that was put out there really by, there was a small subset of population that pushed that narrative. That didn't happen. DPD got more money than they did last year. They got $9 million more dollars than they did in the year before. And the only thing that was cut from their massive request was for overtime. And that was simply because, at least in my mind, why I supported it, because of a need for more checks and balances. So moving forward, I think it's DPD and City Council needs to listen to the community and need to make sure the community's voices are heard. Community Police Oversight Board is one way to do that. They've taken a pretty active role in serving as a voice in a lot of ways. Plus, we have some great advocates that are in this group and who have our ear as well throughout the city. So I think it's continuing to have those communications and especially getting officers out into the communities and being those neighborhood patrol officers, continuing to fund that program so that officers are in the neighborhoods that they're serving and talking to them. And then lastly, I'll say that getting our officers back into the city of Dallas has been a priority of mine as a housing chair.
That is time.
And I'll talk about that later. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Chad. I'm gonna ask Stephanie the same question. Stephanie, again, this is a public safety question. What can the city council do to ensure public safety is being considered without negatively affecting the most marginalized and underserved areas of the city?
Great question. Am I unmuted?
Yes.
Okay, just wanted to check before I start talking.
No worries.
I think that there's a lot of things that we can do. I know that we did approve a budget increase. The city council did of, I thought it was 8 million, but then took away 7 million of overtime budget. And I met with the police association and they were not very happy about this, as you can understand. I know that they were given 1.74 million back to hire 100 civilians, but it was during the time of COVID. And that was just, to them, pretty impossible to do during that time. You know, they told me we might be able to have gotten 11, but we didn't even have job descriptions made when this decision was made. And our crime rates right now are extremely high and trending upwards. And I don't think it's a good time that we cut budget at all, whether it's overtime or not. In terms of not marginalizing our, our part of our community, I think that the cite and release was a good initiative as it came through, but I also think that our new police chief, Garcia, is actually enforcing that. And that's a good idea, making sure that the police in Dallas. Is that me? There's somebody else echoing.
We're going to pause your time.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not sure where that's coming from, but I'm muting everybody else. So we should be good to go.
Okay.
Why don't you try again?
Sorry about that.
33
I'm so sorry.
Apologies, 33 seconds.
Okay. Woo. And so I agree with some of his initiatives that he's pushing out, and, you know, city council supporting our police department's a great idea for that. I also have some ideas on how to keep our police officers in the city, because I agree that we need them, you know, here in the community in order to represent the community and be on patrol and have them be seen. And you know, we want them to live here so that they're defending their city, that they're protecting their city. Go ahead. Sorry.
Okay, thanks. And Chad, I'm going to ask you to unmute. And our next question is on homelessness. And I believe that the way this will work is we'll do Stephanie now. We'll have the first answer and we'll go back to Chad. So on homelessness, how can we make transitional housing effective to help homeless people who have mental health and substance abuse problems? And that's for you, Stephanie.
Well, that's a multi-part question. I think that we need to have more social workers that are helping our homeless population and not just leaving that to our police department to handle. I think that in terms of transitional, if you're talking about people with mental health concerns, sometimes they may not necessarily be as transitional as, you know, a mom that just happens to be homeless with 2 kids or something of that nature. They may need longer term care. We have a facility like that here on Fort Worth Avenue for older, our older citizens. I think that we really need to evaluate who we're placing and where we're placing them, because if it's the case where they need longer term care, they can be placed in a different area versus our homeless population that should be near rail and walkable jobs and walkable medical care, where they can, you know, go to work and really use that transitional facility to get back on their feet and become a contributing member to society again.
Cool, thank you. So Chad, the same question to you. How can we make transitional housing effective to help homeless people who have mental health and substance abuse problems? And you have 2 minutes.
So if you look at the industry research, you'll see that we have sufficient wraparound services. We just don't have the bed space for our transitional housing. We've got over 4,000 shelter beds in the city. The next level after they leave the shelter is to go to transitional housing. And while they're in transitional housing, that's when you give them the wraparound services before they go out and they're on their own, or if they're too elderly or too disabled, they end up in permanent supportive housing, which they're supported by the government. But that transitional piece, we need roughly 3,800 to 4,200 beds pre-COVID numbers throughout the city of Dallas. And we haven't been able to fill that need in decades. Mayor Rawlings tried. There's been a lot of people who have big hearts and who want to help our homeless population, but no one's been able to fill that gap. We had an opportunity as the city to use COVID money to purchase no-tell motels, the worst offending hotels in the city. And there was pressure amongst council for each council district to take on a portion of the homeless population so we don't continue to consolidate them downtown. Myself, a few other council members took that upon ourselves to find one of our worst offending hotels, which I did with the Miramar Hotel. And we are converting what is one of our biggest 911 offending problems into a transitional facility. So this is just only going to take a small chip in the need for transitional housing throughout the city. We're still going to need thousands more beds. I think ultimately it's got to be part of a bond program that we take seriously. We put $20 million into it in the last bond program. I think we're going to have to be much more aggressive if we really want to make an impact on homelessness, in addition to providing the supportive services that we have.
Done.
Soraya, you're on mute.
Get it right. Thank you. Next up, if I'm not mistaken, we're going to have Chad go first again this time.
I
Barry?
think that's right. Yes.
Okay. All right. One moment. All right. Chad, this is a zoning, I'm sorry. Am I right? We're on the zoning question? No, housing question. Sorry about that. Housing question. What is your strategic plan to address the lack of affordable housing in the city of Dallas? Understanding that affordable means different things to different people. Oh, Barry?
Sorry about
All right,
that.
I'm good now. Thank you, Barry. So yeah, the definition of affordability is, you're right, that is something that we hear all the time when we use the word affordable. The first question I get from people is, okay, well, what does that mean? The national sort of standard, which the city of Dallas adopts, is that affordable housing means anything from where you're at the 0% area median income, you're basically you make nothing, and so theoretically you need full support up to making around $60,000 a year. So if you fall within that range, the city is trying to use its resources to find affordable homes for you. What we can do to close that gap. The last number we heard as a city was around 20,000 units that are needed throughout the city of Dallas. One of the things I did as a housing chair is I started a 1,000 unit affordable housing challenge near transit, and it's activating areas that are owned by the city. So lots, old buildings, things that the city's not using. We tried to get DART to play along and put their land up. They're big empty parking lots, but they wouldn't. We hope to change that in the future. But the city of Dallas found enough land where they could actually meet this challenge within half a mile of TODs, where we would then allow for 1,000 new units to be built. So there's two prongs to this. There is building new units and allowing that to happen, making it easier to build out of the permitting office, which the city has been working on. And then it's also preserving our affordable housing stock that we have, because while we need 20,000 new units, if the cost of the homes keep going up and the tax rates keep going up for our older neighborhoods, it's just going to push more people out, and we're going to need even more affordable housing. So we started the neighborhood empowerment zones. We passed that while I was housing chair, which protected, I believe, 6 different neighborhoods throughout the city from rising taxes. In District 6, I think we had one in District 4,
It's time.
and District 3. So.
So Stephanie, same question to you.
Okay. Thanks. I think
You
there's.
need me to repeat the question? You don't need me to repeat the question, Stephanie?
Repeat it just for everybody else, I think.
Sure.
Maybe.
Okay, thank you. All right, it's a homelessness question. How do we make, I'm sorry, we just asked that one. What is your strategic plan to address the lack of affordable housing in the city of Dallas, understanding that affordable means different things to different people?
Awesome. I think there's two main areas we can hit here. One, the city often gives developers money to build in certain areas. And I think that we need to ensure that developers are given money when they have an allotted amount of homes or units, because they're going to typically be units available for affordable housing. And the reason I say a certain amount of units and not like, oh, this whole building needs to be affordable housing is because I really think that we don't need to create segments of Dallas where it's like, oh, here's where the affordable housing is. Here's where the projects are. Having them really be able to live in, a normal apartment where other people are living that aren't on affordable housing, which we have that in some areas. And I just think that moving forward, we really need to push developers to create more of those. I think that also having, Chad mentioned their tax rates not increasing. Well, even if your tax rate isn't increasing, our home values and the way that those are, even your homestead, right, is increasing so much every year. And I think that if you're in a lower income bracket, then perhaps you have a tiered off as it goes down rate of what you're actually paying in terms of your tax rate for your house.
Okay, thank you,
great.
Stephanie. And if you don't mind staying on for a second, because I believe you're going to be up first next.
Yep, the next question is for you, Stephanie, and it's on zoning. Forward Dallas has emphasized transportation-oriented development for almost a generation.
Mm-hmm.
Yet anyone who pays attention to council zoning agendas can see that we give away a lot of zoning that doesn't comport with that plan. And we still lack robust housing and services where Forward Dallas tells us to put them. How do we stop this haphazard approach to land use, and what will you do to make that happen?
Oh man, that does need a major overhaul. I mean, I'm in Kessler Park and I don't have a proper grocery store really nearby. I mean, Aldi's somewhat close, but I think that we need to really be held accountable at City Hall and recognize this is what's been happening. This is where things have gone wrong, and here's how we can fix it. I will tell you, I don't have a solution offhand of how we can, other than to stop, to stop doing just one off here and one off there and say, hey, let's look at this overall as like a macro plan and how things are going to be 5 years from now, not just like in the next year or so.
Okay, thanks, Chad. I think I've just asked you to unmute. Same question to you. Forward Dallas has emphasized transportation-oriented development for a generation. Anybody who observes council zoning agendas can see that we give away a lot of zoning that doesn't comport with that plan. We still lack robust housing and services where Forward Dallas tells us to put them. How do we stop this haphazard approach to land use, and what will you do to make that happen?
I'm off mute. Okay. Well, we now have, in addition to the Forward Dallas plan, which is old, hasn't been touched in a long time, but it is being looked at. The city is also launching a citywide area plan study that's going to look at exactly what you're saying. Like, are we maximizing our use of land across the city? On a sort of micro level in Oak Cliff, if I can share something real quick. Can you allow me to share something, Barry?
Let's not.
We can't? Okay. Well, I started a West Oak Cliff area plan study just for this exact reason. You know, when I first got on the City Plan Commission before I ran for council, the very first thing that happened right before I got on it was that the El Corazon historic restaurant with a beautiful, beautiful old building just kind of west of where the streetcar is came down, and a CVS came up pretty much in the middle of the night. Scott Griggs was councilman, and he got 500 angry letters, calls, and emails about how could we let that happen. And it happened because there was no good plan for that little section of area. So now we've got a CVS with a parking lot that goes right up next to where the streetcar lets out. And now we have a 7-Eleven just south of that. So to prevent that kind of sort of poor planning that you're talking about, Barry, from happening in the rest of the district that doesn't have a plan, we started the West Oak Cliff area plan. That's gonna, I think, being looked at as staff as sort of a micro success, hopefully, once it gets passed in September, of what might be used citywide for the rest of the city to avoid poor things kind of happening near transit.
I'm going to ask a follow-up question, and it's really for both of you. Stephanie mentioned accountability. Chad, you mentioned planning, and I think they go hand in hand. How, other than voting the bastards out every 2 years, how should we hold you guys accountable for actually carrying through on what you're promising to us, both in your campaigns and in these plans that we're promulgating from time to time? Chad, why don't you lead off with that? Let's do 30 seconds, just real quickly.
Sure. Yeah, I think you watch you look at what we promised we're going to do, and you hold us accountable. I know Micah Moore is pretty good about consolidating data for this group, and I think he would be probably one to take that down and then say, hey, give us a report card. I'm happy to have it. I have one of the I think strongest progressive voting records on council, and I also have I've passed more. I've been the leader on more policies than any other council member this term. So feel free to grade me and from now and in the future.
Thanks. Stephanie, same question. How should we hold you accountable?
I think that it's important as a representative to say what you're going to do and then do it and then let everybody know that it's done, and keeping that communication will really help keep people accountable. I own a marketing agency, and transparency always is very big for my clients, right? I'm like, we record all the calls and I can show you your results. And so I not only am saying this is what I'm going to do for you, but I'm showing them this is what we've done. And I would carry that over into city council.
Thanks. I'll hand it over to Soraya for the next question.
Thank you, Stephanie. If you don't mind hanging on for a second, because I'm going to ask you first. The next question is a transit question. The council recently approved a redundant downtown rail line that stops our budget for the next 10 years instead of opting to expand rail to areas of town that it would benefit more. Why is that? And what should we be doing to improve access to rail in Dallas?
Well, not stopping it from going to the areas that need it, right? I think that it's important for us to also understand that the rail as it currently stands is also closely tied to our homelessness issue, because people are sleeping at those stations in districts that need that public transportation, and I'm hearing from, like District 4, that their people aren't going to use it because they don't feel safe there. And so I can see perhaps why maybe certain decisions were made, but not necessarily in the right decisions for growth, right? So we just need to ensure that the populations that need it are going to have that, and overall just create a more commuter friendly with public transportation, as well as like bicycle commuters. I think that's super important around the downtown area.
Thank you, Stephanie. Chad, I'm going to ask you the same question. I'm going to repeat the question. It's and don't forget to unmute Chad there, Barry. The council recently approved a redundant downtown rail line that saps our budget for the next 10 years instead of opting to expand rail to areas of town that it would benefit more. Why is that? And what should we be doing to improve access to rail in Dallas?
Can I get clarification? Is this referring to D2 or what are they referring to exactly?
Chad, I will tell you that this was a crowdsourced question.
Okay.
So I can't tell you that for sure. But if you just
Yeah.
kind of speak in general terms, that's okay.
Chad, I think it refers to the streetcar line that runs down into Bismarck.
I would also think that it deals in a greater sense of what D2 represents. And then if you want to expound on potential streetcar opportunities and the challenges you face, and perhaps if streetcars are going to be a part of the conversation, we give 60 seconds back to Stephanie.
Yeah, let's let Chad answer and see where we come out there.
Okay, I'm going to hit it as a D2 question because I don't see the streetcar as redundant. There's no rail where it goes. So the D2 line, I believe in some ways is redundant. There's a lot of push for that line because it's a lot of federal dollars are coming in. But just because someone's giving you money to do something doesn't necessarily mean it's a good idea, because at the end of the day, we as taxpayers are still going to have to pay for servicing that line. We're still going to have to come up with some of the money to close the gap in what that federal funds do not close. I have probably, myself and one or two other council members have been the biggest skeptics about D2. It has not been approved yet by council. We are still waiting to see what the final resolution is going to look like. If you watched the last transportation committee meeting, I believe, you can see a lot of the questions that we had about the D2 line. It's the biggest concern outside of the money is that it could destroy some of the walkability and some of the potential land use of Deep Ellum. So the big concern of a lot of the landowners and the residents in Deep Ellum is just what it might do to the fabric of that area. And so there's a lot of concerns that go along with that. There will be some new stops. So it is, I don't think it's completely redundant. I think it could activate parts of downtown in a good way. But it's not just a black or white issue is my point there. On the streetcar, since I've got 30 seconds left, I don't believe that's redundant. I think the streetcar is a transportation, it's important for transportation, get people to jobs, it's important for tourism, and it's a huge economic development driver for Oak Cliff. There is a master streetcar plan that it connects the Oak Cliff streetcar through downtown to the M line. So it'd be a true transportation source of a streetcar. And hopefully maybe one day connect it to the zoo to sort of help activate that area. So I think the streetcar is a really cool thing that we have in the city, and it's a great economic development driver and transportation option. Thank you.
That's your time, Chad, but if you could stick around, the next question will be for you, and it's on the environment. What's your plan to ensure that environmental issues that mostly plague West and Southern Dallas, issues like Shingle Mountain, are prevented from happening again?
First, the citywide area plan is an important thing, and that is one of the reasons why every time we talked about it as a council member, we talk about Shingle Mountain and how do we, not let that happen again. That is absolutely what you don't want to see. I think it was mentioned earlier how historically in Dallas we have consolidated people, of low income. And that's something that Dallas has a really sordid past of doing. And not only did Dallas do that, but they also put the factories and the undesirable industries right next to these areas. So that's, Shingle Mountain is a great example of that. And it's just lack of oversight by the city. The city, I think, before my time, took a big good step in the right direction by creating the Office of Environmental Quality. It's not perfect, but at least now we have a department that's directly overseeing environmental issues and having environmental discussions. Moving forward, I think land use is the biggest key there, and then also encouraging people to organize as neighborhoods. If a neighborhood doesn't have a voice, if they don't have a person speaking up for them, they're at risk for that kind of thing happening. If you don't have a council member who's knowledgeable about zoning and who's watching for those kinds of things to slip through the City Plan Commission.
Okay, thanks. Stephanie, same question to you. What's your plan to ensure that the environmental issues that mostly plague Western and Southern Dallas, things like Shingle Mountain, are prevented from happening again?
I think that also plays into the zoning and in our land use and making sure that, we're not having our low income, all our low income areas butt up next to industrial or the railroad tracks and just kind of going by the wayside, right? I think that we as council could also organize more days and encourage our neighborhoods to participate in cleanup days themselves. And I know that since I actually own some property, not in D1 and another area, and they'll put out signs that let people know it's bulk trash to prevent people from putting out bulk trash all the time or just dumping it wherever. And I think since I have bought and sold properties in that area, I can tell since the signs have gone up, that's really helped. So just, communication can also help to a degree. But again, I actually agree with Chad on the land use and zoning and making sure that we're not just putting people in less desirable areas and then not really giving them attention in that area to help.
Thank you, Stephanie. And if you don't mind staying on for just a second, we're going to go to our next question. It's a jobs question. What is your commitment and strategy to establishing more workforce and job opportunities equitably throughout Dallas? That's including job opportunities at a variety of entry points, not just entry level in the south and in southern sectors of Dallas.
Well, right now is even a more challenging time for that with COVID, but I feel like we're going to have a lot more places opening back up. And I think that a big area where we have room for improvement is pushing for skill building at all levels, for all ages, I should say. I know that some of our libraries here and there will have different skill type classes, but making sure that also there's those classes near public transportation where people can get to them that may not have the means otherwise too, and that we're communicating those classes and opportunities for people to learn and then get into entry-level jobs or in other jobs, and helping as a city bring those jobs into Dallas, right? And not letting them always go to Plano and Frisco where they are able to build, and when we've got empty abandoned buildings here that we could bring people into and have jobs right here in the city.
Right on. I'm going to ask Chad now the same question. I'm going to repeat it for everybody. Chad, what is your commitment and strategy to establishing more workforce and job opportunities equitably throughout Dallas, including job opportunities at a variety of entry points and not just entry level in the south and in southern sectors of Dallas?
All right, thanks for that. First, I want to say that you got understanding the difference between equity and equality is very important, and it's something we talk about at council all the time. And understanding that some areas of the city and some folks might need a little bit more help than others to get to a point where they can sort of soar, and the city, I think, has done a decent job of trying to address it. I think we have a lot of room to go in the future. Personally, I have invested in the South. I have invested, my own business is in an area right off 67 and Keast, and I've built a car wash. I started in the car wash industry a few years ago and built a car wash in Oak Cliff down off Keast and Polk, in an area that a lot of people told me, you're crazy for building one here. But I'll tell you, it's been wildly successful, and we hired locally. And I think encouraging other people, bringing them to the area just on a one-on-one level and on a larger level is an important thing to do. I supported and I even advocated for Oak Cliff Works, a program by the Oak Cliff Chamber of Commerce, which is financially supported by City Council, to train folks, some of which have backgrounds, criminal backgrounds, but to train them in entry-level medical tech jobs and other jobs. They're in their, oh gosh, I want to say 6th or 7th iteration of students now. And my friend Keandra Gully in the Oak Cliff Chamber and Casey Thomas was a big supporter of this as well, and championed for it. that is kind of one way we can inject, city money, direct money into neighborhoods to help people get on their feet. Moving forward in all of our policies in the city, we need to have equity at the forefront, especially when it comes to economic development and it comes to anything related to jobs. I feel like with Dr. Johnson there, at the helm, he's taken that seriously, and Liz Sadeo Perea has been a fantastic advocate for that in the Office of Equity and Inclusion. So I'll continue to support their efforts moving forward.
And that's time.
Fantastic, Chad. I didn't catch you in time. If you could unmute again. We've deferred infrastructure improvements to our streets, our sidewalks, our street lights, our lighting for so long that the challenges now seem insurmountable. How do you propose that we begin to correct this issue?
That is one of the hardest questions that I've been asked before, and I've looked at the numbers, I've read through them, and we as a council, if we don't, so every year, despite the budget we put into streets and roads, the roads are degrading at 1% every year. So we put in another 80 million, $100 million into it, it's not even going to make a difference. So simply putting a little more, unless we cut something huge in the budget, I mean, we literally slashed, our biggest budget, which would be public safety, which I'm not advocating for. There's absolutely no way within the current amount of money we have at council coming in from property taxes that we can change the path of streets and roads degradation. What has got to happen is one of two things. We either raise taxes, which most of us on council do not support that, and it wouldn't pass on council, or we look at a bond election to get it done. A special bond election just for streets and roads, which would give us enough money to get us over the hump, whereas then every year our current budget, we would increase by 1%. But that's really the only way I can see that we can do that. On a smaller level, I'm a big fan of street diets, road diets and reductions. Whenever we can do that, that makes sense, and then doesn't just clog traffic, I would support that. We can kind of ease away from our reliance on cars a little bit wherever possible. That will save us a little bit of money in the city budget over time as well.
Hey, thanks for that. And holy moly, we are actually on schedule. Can you believe it? Stephanie, the same question to you. We've deferred infrastructure improvements to our streets, our sidewalks, our streetlights, our lighting for so long that the challenges seem insurmountable. How do you propose that we begin to correct course?
I think that once the bond is established, then the next question is how do we spend it to fix everything, right? And we need to look at where are our highest crime rates, where are all the street races happening, which we are pretty aware of where those are happening based on tickets and crashes, and what are we going to do about that? Can we install I just drew a blank on the term, but the curb barrier when somebody's taking a left, or where are violent crimes and where can we light those streets up? Let's increase public transportation so that we also have less people driving on the streets in general. So, and actually fixing, once we have that money, fixing the roads instead of just fixing a pothole here and there so that they stay longer than the next freeze.
Fantastic. Soraya, next question.
Thank you. And Stephanie, I'm going to have you on first here. And I want to remind everybody, thank you for the questions that you've been submitting. They're really great, and we'll be getting to those soon. If you want to ask a question, be sure to put it in the chat and at Millie Domenech in the chat. So thank you again for that. Stephanie, my question is a budget question. What specific budget recommendations will you propose this budget cycle if elected? And what are your budget priorities for District 1?
Budget priorities. I want to increase public safety. I mean, and that goes a lot of different ways. We need to increase patrol. We need to light roads. We need to be able to stop people that are racing down Hampton. and our other doing donuts in the middle of the Sylvan Bridge. I think that we need to put budget towards those areas where we can really increase our safety and protect our home values. I mean, those go hand in hand, right? If people aren't feeling safe, they're not going to stay here. If people aren't staying here, we're losing their tax dollars. So I think that can be a very downward cycle that we can get in as a community, that we need to ensure that we're putting budget towards stopping that.
All right. Thank you, Stephanie. Chad, I'm going to ask you the same question and repeat the question. What specific budget recommendations will you propose this budget cycle if re-elected? What are your budget priorities for District 1?
Thank you for that. Shouldn't take too long on this one. I think the budget we had this last year, we worked days, night, and weekend to get it done. I wouldn't change a lot in it. I think it's based on the limited amount of money we have, based on the tax money that comes in. I don't think there's a whole lot of tweaks we can make. What I would like to see is more investment from the city within the budget that we have to work with on more neighborhood empowerment zones, which I talked about earlier, which will help homeowners stay in their houses. I'd like to see us, when I was chair of housing, we put money into first-time homebuyers program, and we allocated a large chunk of that, $3 million, I believe, to police, fire, nurses, and first responders and teachers. And I'd like to see us continue that program so we can get some of these professions who are on the borderline of the affordability matrix, keep them in our neighborhoods and quit losing them to Grand Prairie, to the north, to Allen, to Plano. I'd like to keep them in the city. Budget priority items for District 1, we are looking at a redo of the North Oak Cliff Library. That could be a bond project. If it's not a bond project, it could be a budgetary item. Would like to see that specifically get addressed. It's a cool facility, but there's been some interest from people surveyed to see more usable space there for performances, for meetings, for community events, and studio space even too. So we've got some opportunities there with the North Oak Cliff Library, I think, for this next budget. And expansion of trails and improvement of our parks is always important for me. And as a runner and a person whose kids love to go to our parks, so continuing to fund those programs that we've been doing.
Thank you, Chad.
Fantastic. And if you'll stick around for the next question, Chad, did I catch you in time? I did not. While you're unmuting, a message from
I'll
Millie.
stop doing that, Barry, I promise.
No worries. We've been having a lot of questions coming in from the audience. We're going to get to those right after this question. Just a heads up, Ashley, Nix, and Joseph, you'll be up first. So if you can be ready to unmute and ask your question when we call on you. We're going to try to get to as many of those questions as we can. Some of them may be combined with similar questions, so bear with us, where they cover a similar topic. Okay, and with that, our last prepared question. This is on COVID evictions. Chad, what was your personal role, if any, in either supporting or assisting tenants or property owners during the housing crisis that resulted from COVID? And if you've had no personal role, how do you think the city has handled that crisis?
I think the city could have done a better job with handling evictions. I was one of the signatories on the 5-signature memo that Councilman Basil Dua championed on evictions. A lot of times things happen at the horseshoe behind the scenes. And on this particular issue, first of all, you got to realize one thing at council is you got to have 8 votes to get anything done. And if you don't know that going into it, you are, you don't know what you're doing. I learned the hard way when I was on the plan commission on having 8 votes versus not having it, and being able to work with others and being able to compromise is important. Also having colleagues that will work behind the scenes to help you is important too. And on this particular issue, Councilman Basil Dua got it written. I think there were some folks probably on this group who helped with that, and it was great work, and I was very proud to be a signatory of it. Behind the scenes, I worked with the industry groups to make sure they didn't blow it up with some of our northern council members because we needed to get those 8 votes. So you don't often see a lot of things that happen at council if we're not talking about it on the camera, but a lot of things happen behind the scenes, calling these industry groups saying, we've got to get this done. This is important for our residents to keep people in their homes. We need your support. We need you to write a letter of support to prevent council members from falling off the support of that very important ordinance. And that was the role I took in this. So those kinds of things on the eviction, that was a very important thing that we did. Other than that, that was really the limit of my role. Oh, and then also, I guess I say that, and we had a ton of meetings with the city providing monetary support for that as well. But that was I think that's just a basic role that we have as a council member to make sure staff appropriately funds programs like that.
Okay, thanks, Chad. Stephanie, the same question to you. What was your personal role, if any, in either supporting or assisting tenants or property owners during the COVID-related housing crisis? And if you had no personal role, how do you feel the city handled the crisis?
I think the city could have used some of the COVID relief funds that they got at a federal level better to help the home insecure, which are people that are, near losing their home, and help keep them in their home, right? Because once they are homeless, it's a completely different ball game in terms of getting them back in a home. And then when you have empty homes on blocks because people have been evicted, the block then goes down with it. So I would have liked to, I know that we said, no, you can't evict people, but at some point that's going to end. And what are we going to do in order to help people not only have funds now to back pay and to continue paying, but some people as like a landlord, that may be their business or their income. And so we need to keep that in mind as well, that we have to, especially the people that we have that are providing affordable housing, how can we ensure that they are still in business, right? Because we need to continue providing that affordable housing.
Fantastic. Okay, thanks, candidates. We're going to move on now to segment 2 and open it up to our audience. To start off, we have great questions from Ashley, Nix, and Joseph. If we could unmute Ashley now, Millie. Here are the ground rules for this segment, audience members. If you'll keep your questions brief so we can get as many people in as possible, there will be no follow-ups. The candidates will have the same 2 minutes to respond to the audience questions. We'll put them to both candidates. And our first question is from Ashley. Please go ahead, Ashley. And Stephanie, you will answer first.
Okay.
Ashley should be unmuted.
Ashley, are you there? If not, I can read her question for her. Okay, well, I'll go ahead and do that. Stephanie, do you feel that addressing high crime areas via neighborhood engagement and placemaking activities are viable ways to combat crime and blight within the city?
I think it's a good start. I think that, like I mentioned with infrastructure, right? You need to also build the infrastructure around it, and it ties into the jobs and educating people and helping people get either a job or a better job, so that you can help build up the community. I don't think that we're just going to, engage our way out of a blighted situation.
Okay, Chad, same question to you. And I'm going to have to work. Yep, you're unmuted. Do you feel that addressing high crime areas via neighborhood engagement and placemaking activities are viable ways to combat crime and blight within the city?
100% yes. I have 2 separate parts answer to this. Up in District 13, around it was at the 5 Points area, there was an exact focus of this from, I believe it was the U.S. Attorney's Office. There was a lot of crime happening up there. They worked together with Better Block to actually redo that whole intersection and make walkable areas, do a pop-up for for a little, like a little restaurant, I think was in there for a while, and then a bookstore. And then they had a community police right there on the scene, on the site, engaging with neighbors and kids. And I think that's just bringing attention to what a neighborhood could be and how there could be better engagement and partnership with police is one opportunity for that. On another hand, taking areas that have potential that are currently just vacant or not being used is something that I am very passionate about. I started when I was on the Plan Commission these things called Little Villages, which are zoning cases designed to activate areas. We have one that's in the North Cliff Conservation Area, kind of west of Tom Thumb in my district, which is it's this old strip mall. Like it looks kind of like a Bishop Arts building, but it's degraded and boarded up, and there's folks behind there. They find needles and stuff all the time. I mean, that's the kind of problem that you have in this beautiful little neighborhood because it's vacant and it's been allowed to degrade. So we started a zoning case for this area to hopefully activate the uses a little bit more. And I think zoning is one tool you can use in addition to community engagement with DPD and others to get the job done.
Thank you, Chad. And if you don't mind sticking around, next question is going to be from Nix. Nix, are you up?
I've asked her to unmute, but it appears she's not at.
Hello.
Oh, there she goes. There you go.
We've got it, great.
My question for you is, what should the city do to protect homeless COVID patients if Hotel Miramar isn't an option?
What should the city, can you repeat that? I missed the last part.
It's what should the city do to protect homeless COVID patients if Hotel Miramar is not an option?
I mean, the money would be used then for another, it would be used to rent hotel space at another hotel. That's the money is there for either purchasing a facility or for, which I think is a better use of the money for the city for long-term, or for renting a hotel facility for homeless people who have impacted COVID. So to elaborate on this project, this money came to the city at we had a very short turnaround time to decide what to do with it. The Miramar Hotel has been a problem for long before I came to Oak Cliff. And this was an opportunity that we had to purchase a problem facility, put in, use other people's money, best kind, right? Federal money, which would have gone to another city if we didn't use it, purchase a hotel and use it temporarily for COVID patients or COVID impacted homeless people, and then down the road use it as a transitional facility in the future that's managed, that has 24/7 oversight, and it's a win for the city. And we've seen crime in January, February of 2020 to January, February of 2021, the 911 calls have gone down by 50%. And we think that's because of the on-site oversight by city staff. So long answer to a short question. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chad. And Stephanie, did you hear the question, or would you want me to repeat it?
If you could repeat it, that'd be great. I want to make sure I hit all the points.
You bet. So this question is from Nix Winters, and she asked, what should the city do to protect homeless COVID patients if Hotel Miramar is not an option?
Okay. Good question. I think that first of all, Hotel Miramar has already been pushed through as an option. I don't think that we should have spent $3.5 million on that facility. It only has 60 units. I think we could have done better with the funds that we were given there. I also know that just I guess it was February, 16 people that were moved in had to test, according to what I read, 16 people had to be test negative before they could actually move into the facility, which seemed like a real bait and switch to me because I thought it was supposed to be used for COVID homeless patients. And seeing as how people are still getting COVID, it doesn't seem like it should have moved into the transitional housing quite just yet. I know that the crime has gone down. I've walked past the hotel, and there's also there's now security there. So I think that obviously helps with that a lot. But I do think that we should have looked into a larger facility if we were going to purchase one. And if we were going to use, we could have actually maybe gotten two or more. I mean, the tax rolls on that were like less than 900,000. And I know those aren't always on point, but they're not off by 3 times over. So I hope that answers the question.
I think it does. Thank you. And Stephanie, if you don't mind sticking around for our next person that's going to ask a question, that's going to be Joseph. Joseph, you should be unmuted.
Good evening. Special thanks to the host tonight. We really appreciate what you're doing here. Chad, Stephanie, thanks for putting yourself out here. Many thoughtful questions. Mine is real simple, pretty straightforward, specific question. And that's, if you were elected, would you endorse reducing Hampton to 4 lanes from 6? And if so, why?
Is it me first, right? Yeah, okay.
Yes.
That's a great question. I think that we don't want to create congestion, but at the same time, we need to stop the racing, right? So there's some ways to do that without reducing it from 6 to 4 everywhere. I mentioned earlier creating those like concrete medians, right, where you have to make a left-hand turn, and so that traffic naturally is going to slow down a bit, especially at intersections, which is where you generally are going to have those terrible accidents at those intersections. So that's a pretty quick answer for me, is that I think there's ways to do it without doing it the whole way through, but to make sure that people are slowing down towards the intersections where we typically see those accidents happening. And that would also, unless you're just hitting the pedal to the floor every time, going to slow it down along the entire path.
Thank you, Stephanie. Chad? Brett Berry, can we unmute Chad?
I'm good. I think I'm unmuted, right? Yeah, thanks for coming, Joseph. Appreciate the question. As Joseph knows very well, we started a Hampton Road speed racing or traffic calming task force. The name's been used interchangeably. When there was a whole lot of street racing going on, I got a midnight call from one of our constituents, a friend of mine who had temporarily moved from her home to a home right off Hampton and was just completely freaked out by it. And I'm like, well, let's put a task force together and see what we can figure out. And so that group has met dozens of times to address how do we slow down street racing on Hampton Road, and not just street racing, because we got to understand it's also the donuts in the intersection. It's another problem that we have along Hampton and Jefferson and Hampton and Davis. I have never said that I would support going from 6 lanes to 4 lanes, but I do support measures. I generally like, as you know, Joseph, and probably most people on this call know, I like traffic calming. I like street lights when we can have them, but I understand that when you cut down major arterial roads, you have the risk of running traffic through neighborhoods that are not prepared to handle that level of traffic. So I think cutting it down from 6 to 4 lanes just in one fell swoop would be probably against the Council of Governments sort of transportation flow policy. It could be disastrous for neighborhoods. But I think the experimentation is good, and I'd like to see something there. I'm not a traffic engineer, so I don't know what the answer is. I think a giant traffic circle around Hampton and Davidson, Hampton and Jefferson could be cool if it could be worked out. But we'll see how it goes on the Tyler Canty one first, and see if people can figure that out.
Thanks, Chad.
Before
That's
we
your
look at
time.
something else. So yeah.
And stick around for the next one.
All right. Next up, Marco, are you on? You should be unmuted. And Stephanie and Chad, I'm sure if you don't know of Marco now, you will. If you live in D1, he is an advocate in District 1, and we like him a lot.
Oh,
Marco,
can you hear me? Yep. Can you hear me?
are.
Hey, sorry about that.
You're up.
Hey, thanks all for having this and for you all to join. This question is for Chad. So Chad, recently when when there was an election recently, I really appreciated your comments on the importance of inclusion in committee appointments, which to me, which is why I was surprised in terms of your appointment towards the redistricting committee. So my question is, what is your vision for redistricting, and how did that inform your decision on who you picked for that specific seat?
Thanks for that, Marco. And yes, Soraya, I know Marco well. He is a big advocate in our district and was very helpful during our COVID registration efforts for the vaccination, amongst other things. So Bob Stimson was my nominee that council ultimately appointed to the redistricting commission. He is a former council member, has lived in the district, I believe, his entire life, and knows the district better than just about anyone I know. Bob also has a great relationship with former council members and current council members across all of the city. He has worked with Elba Garcia. He has worked with Domingo Garcia on things. He has worked side by side with many leaders on Pinnacle Park's development and on Redbird Mall. He played a role in that as well. So Bob is one of the most knowledgeable, connected people who knows things. Bob shares my vision of us needing to have a minority opportunity district in the north. Right now, there isn't one. The north is an area where there really isn't an opportunity, despite having a large population of people of brown and black skin color in the north. And so I believe, I hope, because now that he's appointed, I can't really talk to him, but my hope is that he will fight for us drawing out a minority opportunity district in the north while preserving as much as we can kind of our current boundaries in the south. With that being said, I believe our role as a council member now is to stay out of it and let the redistricting commission work as independently as possible.
Okay, I know that question, Marcos, directed to you, but I'm interested in hearing what Stephanie has to say about redistricting too. So Stephanie, what's your vision for redistricting, and how will it inform your appointments to the redistricting committee?
Those appointments have been made, but I think that in terms of vision for redistricting, it would be an honor to be a part of that. You know, it happens every 10 years. I think that we really need to pay attention to the demographics of Dallas as a whole and try to represent those in all of our districts versus carving out one type of district versus another type of district, so that we can have fair representation for everyone in Dallas as a whole.
Thanks, and thanks for correcting me on that.
I'm sorry.
Oh, no worries. I just blew it. wasn't thinking. The next question is from Cora Black. Cora, are you on?
Okay, I was like, yes, I'm here. I just couldn't get unmuted. So I am a resident in D1 in Sylvan 30 specifically. But due to the first questions that were asked, I wanted to ask the both of you. So there seems to be a huge misunderstanding about what defund the police actually means. But with that in mind, I just want to know, what's your stance about police reform in Dallas? I feel like a lot of other candidates have made it very clear, and I would like some clarification from you both.
And Stephanie, if you could answer that first.
Okay. Yeah. I think you're correct. There's been a lot of kind of misinterpretation of that. I don't agree with defunding the police and taking money away. I do agree with putting money towards social services to take some of those responsibilities that fall on the police that they're not trained for, and like mentally ill, you know, responding to calls of that nature, bringing more social services into domestic violence type calls so that things don't escalate like they do now. Also providing our officers like better training for different situations to de-escalate situations. Does that answer your question? No? Okay.
I'm afraid we're going to have to move on
Okay.
because we do want to let a lot of folks, or as many people as possible, get their questions in. And folks, if you could just ask your question, let's skip the introductions and whatnot. Chad, I think I've unmuted you. If you could answer the same question and let me know if you need me to read it again for you.
Thanks, Barry, and thank you for the question, Cora. Good to see you. I definitely support. Looking at all police policies. One of the things that we did fund in the last budget was de-escalation training, as Stephanie mentioned. That was something I thought was very important, and it was unanimously supported by council. I also, dealing with homelessness the way that I have, being the chair of housing and homelessness in the past, one of the major things that concerned me is when there was an incident with a homeless person, where it was a mental illness issue. The policy was to have 6 officers plus a supervisor had to go to the scene to deal with the situation. And a lot of times it would result in the homeless person getting taken to jail, which, that's not helping anyone. When the problem might be a mental illness, or it might be at the end of the day, just needing a home, or a drug problem or something of that nature. So I'm very happy that TC put in the budget that we were going to fund these, additional services for these individuals, instead of just sending a platoon of officers there to escort them straight to jail. And I think that in the future, we need to continue looking at that and doing that. Also very happy that we have, to welcome our new chief. I've been very impressed with him so far and the way he's handled, just immediately when he got here, having to deal with a lot of serious incidents. And I think the chief has done a good job, and he's been very interested in meeting with the entire community, and getting into the neighborhoods and meeting the neighbors. And I hope to have him come to District 1 soon. We're in talks of trying to get a town hall where he can come. Hopefully when COVID's finally over, we can do it in person, but for now it'll be something online for the chief to come talk to folks. I definitely also support our neighborhood patrol officers, getting our officers into the communities and continuing to develop relationships with folks. I think that's important from a young age, that kids can see, hey, these officers are not bad guys. They're nothing to be scared of. These are people that we can have relationships with, and building that trust from the ground up, I think, is important. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think we're going to have to start wrapping it up now. I thank you all for submitting your questions. And
I think we can do one more, Soraya. I think we've got time for one more. Yeah, and I think that's from Libby Hayhurst. I'm going to go ahead and ask her to unmute. Chad, stick around. And Libby seems to be having technical difficulties, so I'm going to ask her question for her. Will you talk more about your decision to support Royal Blue in their pursuit of an economic development loan, given that it's a high-cost luxury grocery store in an area that lacks affordable fresh food? And before you answer, Stephanie will ask for your critique of Chad's decision to do that when it's your turn. Chad, go ahead.
The Royal Blue, I love that topic. Yeah, that was an economic development. Staff proposed it as a food desert scenario, and I guess in their model, it was an answer to what they believed to be a food desert. I do believe we need more grocery stores in Oak Cliff, but I saw it as an economic development opportunity to take jobs from Highland Park and move them into Oak Cliff. So the loan, they also wanted a grant, which we did not support. I never supported that grant, but the loan was a low interest loan in which the city would have made more money than the city was doing with the money just sitting in the account. So it was an opportunity for the city to make money and for us to bring 30 jobs, as the grocery store would have moved their commissary kitchen where they prepare food for all their stores to Oak Cliff. We put in a bunch of requirements for Royal Blue, and ultimately they didn't take the loan because the requirements were too stringent. The requirements included first attempting to hire locally, offering $15 an hour wages, providing education classes for others in the neighborhood, and offering certain quantities of food at market rate prices, not jacked up prices, but just regular prices for that you might find at Aldi or somewhere else. Ultimately, I think it would have been a win for the neighborhood across the board, as we would have had at least 30 new jobs. But at the end of the day, the numbers didn't work for Royal Blue, and I'm fine with that. They didn't take the money, and the money can go somewhere else. But what came out of it that was good is that we started having a lot of education classes for the community. A lot of people are now more engaged on economic development in District 1, and that to me is a win for everybody. So it was a learning lesson for me on how to handle a case, and because I didn't do a good job of it early on.
That's your time, Chad.
But it was a win at the end, I think, for the neighborhood.
Okay, Stephanie, again, this will be the last question. What are your thoughts on the Royal Blue situation? And you have 2 minutes.
I think we already have a Royal Blue type situation with Cox Farms Market. I mean, it's great to be able to go pick up some fruit and stuff there, but it costs twice as much as it does anywhere else, just like it's going to at Royal Blue. But I think that asking somebody to change their business model, that's probably why they're not going to accept that. So we need to actively seek out, because it is a food desert. I mean, we need to be able to have a large chain grocery store closer to our South Oak Cliff neighbors, and we need to do a better job of seeking out those developments, but not just giving away dollars. Which in this case, it wasn't going to be giving away dollars, which I appreciate that, because that does happen from time to time where grants are given and it's like, was that so helpful?
Okay, thank you so much for that. That is going to conclude our District 1 candidate forum for Reform Dallas. If you'd like to stick around, we're going to have an open chat for about 10 minutes while we get ready for our D2 forum. We'll be starting that at 8:30. Let me remind everyone the recording will be available on reformdallas.io. Where we also have a comprehensive election guide with resources on all candidates and campaign finance. I'd really like to thank the candidates, the audience, and the members of Reform Dallas for participating tonight. Again, please stay on the Zoom meeting as the District 2 candidate forum will begin in just a few minutes. Thanks, folks. Thank you again.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.